We're diving deep today into something pretty fundamental, really, to the human experience. Loss and change.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everywhere.
And our sources today, these ancient narratives, they really hone in on this through a concept called Maranjabhyasana.
Right. Ananyabhyasana. It's a key term here.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. Bhyasana. At its heart, it means something like misfortune, ruin, destruction.
Yeah, like a deep loss. Not just feeling sad, but something being shattered.
Exactly, that feeling of essential happiness just being gone, wiped out.
And Maranjabhyasana makes it specific. It's the misery caused by death.
The kind that truly eradicates joy. The texts even call it a karmadaraya compound.
Which basically means death is defining the kind of misery. It's death misery, you could say.
It's fascinating how right away these stories frame loss not just as, an event, but as something that changes your whole state of being. It strips away happiness.
It really does. And framing it like that, as this misery, that death eradicates happiness, it sets the scene perfectly for understanding why these characters act the way they do. Their motivations, their reactions, they're powerful.
So our first story, it brings us these two lifelong friends, and they also happen to be kings.
Right. King Alakapa of Alakapa and King Vethapaka of Vethadipaka.
Imagine that. They grew up together, studied under the same teacher, the works.
For shared history.
Yeah. And then both ended up on the throne after their fathers passed. Each ruled a kingdom of 10 yojanas.
Which wasn't small change back then. A yojana is, well, it's a significant distance. These were substantial territories.
So they were powerful men, established rulers.
Definitely. Not just local chiefs. They had real influence. And that shared background, their similar status, it probably made their later choices even more striking.
Because despite all that royal privilege, they weren't, immune to life's big questions. The sources say they actually spent time just observing.
Watching the cycle.
Yeah, people being born, people dying. And here's where it gets really, really interesting. They came to this profound realization
That when you die,
nothing goes with you.
Yep.
Absolutely nothing. Not your stuff, not your status, not even your own body.
everything gets left behind.
Everything, no matter how much you value it.
And that realization, it hits hard. It's this timeless truth, isn't it? You see it across so many philosophies. The attachments we have, they're temporary.
Even the connection to our own physical self, gone.
And recognizing that, really seeing it, that's often the catalyst, It pushes people to look for something deeper, a different way.
It definitely did for these kings. This understanding led them to ask this, fundamental question together. Kino Garavasan.
What's the point of this household life for us?
Exactly. What are we doing here?
Okay.
And their answer, renounce it all, become ascetics. Babaji Sama.
So they handed over their kingdoms to their sons, their wives.
I mean, just think about that shift. Willingly giving up that kind of inherited power, comfort. It really shows how deeply they felt that conviction about life's impermanence.
And it wasn't just about running away from personal suffering either. It seems like a deep understanding of the limits of worldly power. They were looking for a different kind of fulfillment.
A spiritual path.
Which was a really significant thing in their culture and still resonates today, obviously.
So off they went to the Himalayas. These two former kings now living as ascetics.
A whole new life.
But their journey took another twist. They pretty quickly realized that even living simply, living together, still felt a bit too familiar.
Apabaheta sadisa, the text says. Too much like their old life somehow.
It wasn't quite the complete solitude they were looking for, for that deep reflection.
And that shows you something key about the ascetic ideal, doesn't it? It's not just about giving up material things.
Right.
It's also about cutting those social ties, those dependencies, to really cultivate that inner focus. Even a good friend on that path can become a kind of distraction.
So they decided to separate. Each king, former king, took his own mountain.
Solitude.
But they didn't completely cut ties. They agreed to meet up every fortnight on the Upasetha day, a day for observance.
A way to check in.
And they had this simple but kind of poignant system to know the other was okay. Each night, or maybe just on that meeting night, they'd light a fire on their mountain peak.
A signal across the valley.
Yeah, just a flame saying, I'm still here, still alive.
Mm.
A quiet way to keep that bond, even in solitude.
It adds that human element, doesn't it? Despite the hardcore asceticism, there's still that connection, that quiet care for each other shown in that little fire.
Okay, so time passes after they separate. And then the ascetic Vithapatapaka, one of the friends, he passes away.
And his story takes another turn, rebirth.
Yeah, he's reborn as a powerful diva king, a Mahasako Devaraja.
So a deva, like a celestial being, powerful, living in a different realm.
Exactly. Quite the step up from an ascetic hermit in the Himalayas.
It really is. And this brings in that whole cosmology, right? Rebirth, different planes of existence. It's fundamental to these stories. His power as a diva king suggests maybe good karma paying off.
Could be. Meanwhile, back on the other mountain, the surviving ascetic friend, he notices something's wrong.
The fire signal?
Right. The usual fortnight meeting day comes around, Kado Atamase Sampate, and there's no fire from his friend's peak, Ajiyadiswa.
He didn't see the fire.
And immediately he knew. Sayako me kalakatori anyasi. My companion has passed away. That simple signal made the absence so final.
The lack of that fire becomes this really potent symbol of loss, doesn't it? It cuts that connection instantly. No ambiguity.
What's really interesting, though, is the Diva King. The moment he's reborn, the Batakanaya Vijahitva, his very first thought.
His friend.
His friend. He's immediately worried about him. The source even calls him Amagamiha Pariso.
A man lost on the path.
Yeah, basically beside himself with eagerness and worry to get to his grieving friend. Even as this powerful Deva, that bond was still incredibly strong. He was almost frantic.
Wow. Even in that new, elevated state, the first concern is for his friend. That says so much about their connection. Affection transcending rebirth itself.
So they eventually meet. The Deva King asks his friend about living alone, and the ascetic confirms he used to have a companion.
Okay.
Then comes this. Well, the slightly odd conversation about an elephant.
An elephant.
Yeah. The ascetic says he's troubled by this elephant. Hari Nisaya Kilamami. And hati apparently could be singular or plural. One elephant or elephants.
Huh. Okay. What's the problem with the elephant?
Well, the ascetic complains it leaves dung where he sweeps samajantane lantet patenti, and it kicks up dust with its feet. Padehi paharitva pasu utaranti.
So practical problems, annoyances.
Yeah, he emphasizes the work involved in cleaning up lechacentos pasu sama karonto kilamami. It just seems kind of mundane for a renunciant focused on higher things, right?
It does seem a bit strange, doesn't it? Maybe the elephant isn't just a literal elephant.
You think it's metaphorical?
It could be, representing some kind of inner struggle, or maybe an external obstacle he's facing in his solitude. The single plural thing could mean one specific issue or just a general burden.
Why an elephant, though?
Well, in some traditions, elephants can symbolize, untamed power, desires, things that need to be controlled or managed. It could be something like that he's wrestling with.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. So the Diva King, hearing his friend's trouble, whatever it represents, he offers to help. To stop the elephants from coming. Tena hi tesa anyagamane karisamiti.
Okay, how?
He gives them these really specific, almost magical gifts. Ahadakanta.
A lute, pleasing to elephants.
Exactly. And ahatikintamanta.
A chant pleasing to elephants.
So, right. He even shows him 3 specific strings on the lute and teaches him 3 specific chants. Very targeted tools for this elephant issue.
Again, it sounds magical, but maybe those gifts also symbolize something, like internal resources or practices to deal with the elephant problem, the lute, the chants, maybe ways to harmonize or control these forces.
And the number 3, maybe that signifies something too.
Possibly. 3 principles, 3 practices. The source doesn't spell it out, but it feels significant.
Well, whatever they were, they apparently worked. The ascetic uses them. He recites the Palyanamanta.
The chant for fleeing.
And plays the Palyanatanti.
The string for fleeing.
On the lute. And the source is, Tapaso Palyanamant, Fatva Palyanatanti Paharitva Hati Palapetfavasi. He drove the elephants away and lived in peace.
So, problem solved. The Diva King's intervention, whether literal or symbolic, helped him overcome the difficulty. It shows the power of friendship, or maybe those cultivated inner resources.
Okay, so let's switch gears now. Completely different story, different place. We're off to Kosambi, and we meet King Parantapa.
Right.
Picture this scene. The king is enjoying the soft morning sun, Balatapa Tapamano. He's with his queen, who's pregnant, Gabinya Devyasadi. And get this, they're seated in the air, Kasatali Nisidi.
Seated in the air. Wow, that paints quite a picture. Power, status, maybe even a hint that things are about to get unusual.
Definitely sets a scene. And the queen, she's wearing this beautiful red woolen shawl, apparently worth 100,000.
Very luxurious.
And she's kind of playfully interacting with the king. She takes his jeweled royal signet ring, also worth 100,000, mind you, off his finger and slips it onto her own Atano Glia Palandi.
Just a quiet, intimate moment. Humanizes them, establishes her importance, and that ring feels like it might be important later.
It definitely is. Because then, completely out of the blue, this creature appears.
A bird? With the form of an elephant, like a rock or something.
Something huge and mythical, yeah. And it sees the queen, who's heavily pregnant, and mistakes her for a piece of meat.
Oh no.
It just dives down, spreading its massive wings. Bache visajet vautari. Talk about a terrifying interruption.
That just shatters the scene, doesn't it? From royal serenity to sudden immense danger, and mistaking her for prey highlights how vulnerable even the powerful can be.
The king hears this thing landing, panics, and just bolts into the inner palace and Tonavisari Pafisi.
He just leaves her.
Flees in terror. But the queen, she can't run. She's heavily pregnant. Garugavataya. And the text says she was also naturally fearful. Birugajatikaya Vijayana Kamtasaki. Her condition, her nature. She's stuck.
Wow. The king's instant flight versus her inability to escape really emphasizes the danger she's in all alone.
And then the unthinkable happens. The bird just grabs her, puts her in its nakapanjadera, its claw cage.
Claw cage. Terrifying image.
And just takes off, soaring into the sky. Akasai Pakandi. The source mentions this bird has the strength of 5 elephants.
Unbelievable power.
And its habit is to take its prey somewhere specific to eat it. And that's exactly what it intends to do with the queen.
Her helplessness in its grasp, it just shows how precarious life is, how suddenly things can change, even for royalty.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the queen is obviously terrified of dying Marakaya Bate up there in the sky. But here's where she shows incredible strength. She's thinking clearly.
Even in that situation.
Yeah. She knows that human sounds often startle animals.
Okay.
So she comes up with a plan. When the bird lands to eat her, she'll make a loud noise, try to scare it off, to save herself and her unborn child. Saga vinajivitaka at papuchisami. She doesn't want them both to perish.
That's amazing presence of mind. In the midst of that terror, she's strategizing.
The source even notes her wisdom pachadaya in just enduring the flight, not crying out, saving her chance.
Incredible resilience, understanding animal behavior, using it to her advantage. That's critical.
So this giant bird carries her off to the Himalayas, to a huge banyan tree, Mahanagrotto.
A banyan tree?
Yeah, described as being shaped like a pavilion Machapakarena Hito. Apparently, this was the bird's usual dining spot.
Like its lair.
Pretty much. It puts her down among the branches, and then, crucially, it does something habitual. It looks back the way it came. Agatamagal olakesi.
Looks back? Why?
The text just says it was its nature, its habit, agatamagalokane, kiret desai damata. But that habit, that gave the queen her opening.
Ah, the perfect moment.
She realizes this is it. Idani imapalapatu fataidi titsintafa. She throws up her hands, claps loudly, makes mouth sounds, pachi santani cheva mukasai de and scares the massive bird away.
That's like Kati Palapisi.
Yes. Amazing. Quick thinking, pure courage. She changed her fate right there.
Incredible bravery.
Why?
But her ordeal isn't quite over. As the sun starts to set, Suryathanga Kali, she suddenly goes into labor. Oh no, not now.
Right then. Gabe kamajavata kalesu. Labor pains started. And at the same time, this huge storm cloud appears. Gajanto mahamago utahi, roaring thunder, filling the whole sky. Sabadi saso.
They talk about dramatic timing.
Yeah.
The storm, the labor, it just amplifies her isolation and vulnerability, nature mirroring her inner turmoil.
She spends the entire night in agony. Dukaparitaya Sāmāvatī di denamanausi. Totally sleepless, high up in this tree with no comfort. Sukehitaya. Not even a single word of reassurance from anyone. Mavai ayeti vakanamatapi alabanaya.
Can you even imagine? Alone, in labor, exposed during a storm in a tree. It's just harrowing.
It really is. Such resilience just to survive that night.
Emphasizes her incredible inner strength, her solitary struggle for her life, and her child's life.
But then, dawn breaks. Vibhaimanaya panaratia. And as it does, 3 things happen like miracles, all at the exact same moment.
Okay.
The clouds completely vanish. Valakavigamuka. The sun rises Arudavananya. And the queen gives birth, Gabavuranyake ekakanivahosi.
Wow. All at once, after all that darkness and fear. That's powerful symbolism. Hope, renewal.
It really feels like a sign, doesn't it? A new beginning.
Almost divinely timed.
And because the baby was born precisely when the clouds cleared and the sun rose, Migutunya ka arugamanatunya ka kahitva jatataya, they named him Udena. Udenoti namamakasi.
Udena. A name tied forever to that extraordinary birth moment. Feels like he's marked by destiny from the start.
So now she's a mother, alone in the wilderness with a newborn, and she has to be incredibly resourceful just to survive.
What does she do?
She looks for fallen fruit, falafalataya periasanti. And she even finds scraps of meat the bird had left behind. Sakuyana karitama
Yes, leftover meat.
Yeah, and she squeezes the juice out of it and feeds that to her baby boy. Pifte. Just pure survival instinct.
That's incredible. The lengths a mother will go to, that primal drive to protect her child, even in the absolute worst circumstances.
Else in Hanan, someone unexpected arrives. It's the ascetic.
The former king from the first story.
The very same one. The friend of the David king. He'd been living on the other mountain, remember? He just stumbles upon them. And he's completely shocked to find a human woman and a baby way up in this tree, Manusimiti.
What are the odds? Such a chance encounter. It just highlights how utterly isolated she was.
So the queen explains how the bird brought her there, Ani Tamhiti, and she mentions she's still afraid it might come back, Otarati.
Understandable fear.
Then he asks who she is, and she expresses this concern about mixing castes. Jati sabitato bayamiaya.
Ah, the social hierarchy again. Even in the wilderness, that's on her mind. Shows how deeply ingrained it was.
But it turns out they're both castrata. Same warrior ruling class.
Oh, interesting. A shared background.
So the queen kind of appeals to this. She asks him to show his kshatriya maya, his kshatriya skill or knowledge.
Like proving his noble credentials.
Right.
Or maybe she thinks he has specific abilities because of his caste.
Maybe both. Then she asks him directly, please climb up and help me get my son down from this tree. Tinahi aruya putakamihotarili.
Appealing to that shared identity for help. Makes sense. What does he do?
He agrees, but she asks him not to touch her. Mamahatina chupeti vute.
Respecting boundaries even then.
Exactly. So he very carefully makes a path down the side of the tree, climbs up, and takes the baby down without touching the queen. Dayachopidvava darkayo terezi. Then he takes them both back to his hermitage, Sāmāvatī.
Okay, so he helps them.
Yeah, he cares for them with real compassion. Anukampaya paijaki gives them special honey without flies, nimakakamaju, and ripe rice, sanyatasali. A genuine act of kindness.
It shows his good character, doesn't it? Empathy, helping someone in desperate need even while living as a renunciant, and respecting her wishes, too.
Definitely. But despite his kindness, the queen starts to feel really uneasy after a while.
Uneasy? Why? He saved them.
Well, she doesn't know the way home. She doesn't know the way anywhere from this remote hermitage. And deep down, she doesn't fully trust him. Iminapi mizedivisa samatampinate.
No real trust.
And she's terrified. What if he just leaves? What if he abandons them there? She thinks, Sachupania amepaya katajigamisati upopi diva marana pupuchesama. If he leaves us, we'll both die right here.
That's a primal fear. Survival instinct kicking in again. She feels completely dependent on him.
And that fear drives her to make this really drastic decision. She decides she has to break his vow of celibacy, Solibanditva.
Break his vow? Why?
She believes it's the only way to make sure he won't leave her and her son. Yatama namayukatu tatakatu pataiti. She thinks she needs to tie him to them, emotionally, physically.
Wow, that's
What?
complex. Desperation driving her to compromise his deepest principles just to ensure their survival. It's that tension between survival and ethics again.
The source says she deliberately enticed him, Palabepov, by revealing herself inadequately dressed Dunivata to Pradudasanena.
So she used seduction.
Seems so, and it worked. She caused his Solavinacide the destruction of his virtue, his downfall from his vows.
A huge turning point. For both of them. Driven by her fear. His human vulnerability raises big questions about those vows versus primal needs.
And after that, their lives changed completely. They started living together harmoniously, apparently. Samagasalvaseva sisu. From that time on, Tato Pahaya.
So the ascetic is no longer just an ascetic. He's now a partner, a protector, bound to her and the child.
Right. Now, fast forward a bit. One day, the ascetic, maybe we should call him the former ascetic now.
Perhaps.
He's observing the stars, the constellations, Nakata Kayoga Olukanato. And he sees something troubling in King Parantapa's stars. Paransapasana Katapadas Disva, a negative influence.
Ah, the astrology comes back in.
And based on this, he just announces it to the queen. Pada Kosambia Parantaparaja Matotiyaha. My dear, King Parantapa of Kosambi is dead.
Just like that, based on the stars.
Seems so. It reflects that belief in cosmic signs influencing life down here. And this prediction obviously changes everything for the prince. The queen is, maybe understandably, taken aback. She asks him, Kasma aya eva vadisi. Why do you say that? Do you have some grudge against him? Kiti tena sadia gato atiti.
Questioning his motives, was it personal?
But he denies it flat out. Not pibare. No, my dear. No ill will. Nakatapiana masa disva eva vadamiti.
I'm just saying it because I saw it in the stars.
So, a contrast again. Her potentially emotional reaction versus his detached reliance on his astrological reading.
When the reality sinks in that her husband, the king, is dead, the queen's first reaction isn't tears.
No.
No. Her first thought is about her son. She realizes, my son is now the rightful king.
Thinking of his future, his inheritance, practical in a way. But then, a moment later, the grief hits her, and she starts weeping. The ascetic gently asks why she's crying now at the Kasmarada Siddhi.
Right, if she knows her son is king.
She explains her worry. Yes, he's the heir, but he's so young. Taharo miputo. He lacks power, support, experience. Apabala mahajanikovat. How can he possibly take the throne?
That makes sense. It's not just about the title, it's about the reality of ruling. A young, unknown boy. It's a huge challenge. She feels the weight of it.
The ascetic, though, steps up. He reassures her. Hotubade, masentai. Don't worry. If you want the kingdom for him, Sakasa Raja Patesi, I will help make it happen. Ahamasa Vrajalabanakarakani Samiti.
So he's fully committed now, not just protecting them, but actively helping the prince claim his birthright.
And how does he help? He gives those special gifts, the elephant charming lute, and chants directly to their son, Udena.
Passing on the tools, literally the tools for gaining power in this story.
Then he trains the boy. Really specific instructions. Day 1. If elephants don't show up, climb a tree. When they do, recite this chant, play this string, they'll flee without even looking back. Go down, come home.
Like a training manual.
And the prince does it. Reports back. Success.
Yeah.
Day 2. Different chant, different string. This time, the elephants will look back before fleeing.
A different level of control.
Maybe. Prince does it again, succeeds again. It's like this targeted, almost magical apprenticeship in elephant control.
It really emphasizes the specific strategic use of these gifts, and the prince learns quickly. He's obedient, capable, ready, perhaps.
Apparently so. Because after this training, the ascetic tells the queen, send him. Send your son to Kosambi. He'll go there and become king.
Just like that. Time for him to claim his destiny.
So the prince bows to his parents, says goodbye, and he sets off. He actually rides on the back of an elephant that's heading back towards the city anyway.
Convenient transport.
And as he's riding, he leans down and whispers in the elephant's ear. To the elephant. What does he say? He tells it who he is. I am the son of King Parantapa of Kosambi. Kosambia Parantaparanyo Puto. And then he asks for its help. Help me take my father's kingdom. Petika Mirajagachikava Dehi Samiti. A direct appeal to the animal he now has some power over. Bold move.
And it works. The elephant lets out this huge roar, Hatarva Ravi, a command, summoning thousands of other elephants, and Ekani Hati Sahasani Sanapatantuti.
Summons an army of elephants.
Instantly, thousands converge, and Ekani Hati Sahasani Sanapatusu. Then the lead elephant sorts them out. Old ones retreat. Chiahati Pekemantu, they obey. Very young ones turn back. Atitarun Hati Nevatantu, they obey too.
Wow. Incredible control. Discipline within the herd, answering his call, shows the power he now wields.
So the prince arrives at the border, surrounded by thousands of war elephants. Anekehi Yotahatisa Hasiva Parivuto. Quite an entrance.
Unforgettable, I'd imagine. He goes to a village, announces who he is, Airanyo Puto, and calls for supporters. Anyone seeking prosperity, join me. Sampati Pathayamana Mayasati Agatsantuti. He starts gathering human followers too. Manusasaga hike Kargum.
Smart move, building support, both animal and human.
Then he marches on Kosambi itself, surrounds the city, and sends a message. Utafam Daintu Rajova, give me war, or give me the kingdom.
No messing around. Straight to the point. Shows leadership, determination.
But the city leaders, the citizens, they refuse.
Refuse. Even with an army of elephants at the gate.
Yeah, they explain why. Our queen, they say, the pregnant one. She was taken by that giant bird. We don't know if she's alive or dead.
Still loyal to her. And uncertain.
Exactly. Until we know what happened to her, they say, we won't give you war, and we won't give you the kingdom. Plus, they mentioned that kingship is hereditary. They need proof. Understandable position. Loyalty to the missing queen, adherence to tradition. It's a reasonable obstacle. So Idina has to convince them. He tells them again, I have her son. He names key officials that he would know if he grew up there. Sāmāvatī namani katetva.
Testing his knowledge.
And finally, the clincher. He shows them the proof. The red woolen shawl and the royal signet ring.
Ah, the items from the beginning. The ones the queen had.
The very ones. Tangible proof. Things only royalty would have possessed, and things tied directly to their missing queen.
That must have done it.
It did. The citizens see the shawl, see the ring. They recognize them instantly. All doubts vanish. Nikakahutva. They throw open the city gates, Bara Vivaritva, and they anoint him king right then and there. Taraje Abisinjisu.
And just like that, Prince Udina takes the throne. That connection to his mother proved by those objects was the key. Amazing story arc.
It really is. Okay, now, another shift. A completely different story, and honestly, a pretty heartbreaking one.
Okay.
Imagine a couple, starving. They have a newborn baby. They're on some long, difficult journey, and their food has run out completely. Parika pateya kudabiruta.
Utter desperation.
They reach a point where they literally can't carry the baby anymore. Not both of them at the same time, maybe, or maybe just total exhaustion. And they face this awful decision of getting the child. Put the kachata.
Oh, it's brutal. Unthinkable.
The mother. The text says her heart was naturally tender. Matuhadea nama muduka hoti. She just refuses at first. I can't abandon my own living child. You can only imagine her anguish.
That immediate visceral refusal, the power of that maternal bond, even in the worst possible situation.
So they try a compromise. They'll take turns carrying the baby. And when it's the mother's turn, she's so gentle, lifts him like he's a garland of flowers, holds him to her breast, carries him on her hip. Just pure tenderness. Before she has to hand him back to the father.
Every touch filled with love, even as they're contemplating this horrific act, it makes it even more tragic.
But the father, his experience is different. Every time he takes the baby and then has to put him down again for the mother's turn, the pain he feels is overwhelming. Even worse than his hunger, the text says, Chatakatopi balevatera vedana upaji, putting the child down, the gahirwa hapitahane, is agony for him. Maybe in a different way.
Consumed by the desperation, maybe? The physical toll?
Maybe. He keeps pleading with the mother.
If we live, we can have another son. Chatamanti. Let's leave him.
That pragmatic survival at all costs argument.
But the mother just keeps refusing. Or stays silent. Her heart must have been breaking. That clash between pragmatism born of desperation and deep emotional attachment. Heartbreaking. Different ways people crack under that kind of pressure.
Then the moment comes. As they're taking turns, the baby, exhausted, finally falls asleep in his father's arms.
Asleep. Vulnerable.
And the father, knowing the child is asleep, won't cry out. He does it. He makes sure the mother is walking ahead, not looking. Then he lays the sleeping baby on some leaves under a bush and walks away. Piyasi.
Deceitful. Taking advantage of the child's sleep. It shows how far gone they are, how starvation, desperation can just erode everything. Chilling.
The mother walks on a bit, then turns back, expecting the child doesn't see him. She cries out, Sami kuhimi pudoti. Husband, where's my son?
The moment of realization.
And the father just replies, coldly it seems, I laid him down under a bush back there.
Oh, the coldness of it.
The mother just breaks completely. She screams at him, Sami mama nursai. Husband, don't destroy me. Putta vina jividuna sakisami. I can't live without my son. Ani mi puttanti. Bring him back to me. beating her chest, wailing, Ura paharitva paridevi, utter devastation.
That raw agony, the finality of his act hitting her, the relationship shattered right there. Just a horrifying portrayal of human cost in extreme hardship.
And the source ends this part with this really somber note. It reflects on how even seemingly small evil deeds have consequences. It quotes, Papaka nameta apakanti navamanitaba.
This evil deed should not be underestimated as small.
Exactly. And it hints that this couple will suffer later because of this pavantare tasa kamuno nisandena, future suffering from the ripples of this action.
Yeah, the karma principle again. Actions have consequences, even actions born of desperation. It shapes their future, a really stark warning.
Okay, so our final story follows this same couple. After abandoning their child, they eventually stumble into a cowherd village. Okay, so they survived. They did. And they arrive on a special day. It's the day of the cowherd's annual cow blessing ceremony. Tadivazanga Gopalakasa Tinumagalaholti.
Auspicious timing, maybe?
Perhaps. And there's another interesting detail. A Pachika Buddha.
A solitary Buddha. One who doesn't teach.
Right. One such Pachika Buddha regularly gets his meals at this particular cowherd's house. Kopalakasa Gehini Bata Eko Pachika Buddha Bunyachati. So there's a spiritual presence there, too.
Sets a scene. The desperate couple arriving amidst ceremony and spiritual presence. Potential for something to happen, karmically speaking.
The cowherd himself is described as a really kind soul, Mujujatiko Kulaputo. He welcomes the starving couple, gives them food, and carries on with his ceremony. Sotaispajetva Magalamakasi.
A generous act.
Yeah, there's lots of rich milk rice prepared for the festival, Baho Payaso Payato Hoti, and he gives them a good portion, with plenty of ghee, Bajutena Sapina Payasa de Pizi, such a contrast to their earlier state.
His immediate kindness really stands out, doesn't it? Especially after the darkness of their story. A bit of hope.
And then the wife does something remarkable. She tells her husband, eat as much as you want. Yavadate bunjati vata. She knows how starved he's been, digrati dinadarosi.
Oh, okay.
But she herself only eats a tiny bit, with hardly any ghee. Hatayamanisapi tokameva bunji. She makes sure the rich part goes to him.
Wow. Even after everything, that selflessness towards him, her compassionate nature seems incredibly resilient.
The husband, though, he eats a lot. But the text says even after 7 or 8 days, he still feels hungry. Like the food isn't satisfying some deeper craving. Itaro bahupujitva satihadi adies chatataya ahatataya chinditu nasaki.
Still unsatiated. Maybe a hint of that karmic consequence. Or just deep trauma manifesting as physical hunger.
Could be. Anyway, after feeding them, the kind cowherd starts eating his own meal.
Right.
Now there's another person watching all this. A man named Kochahalika.
Kochahalika, okay.
He sees the cowherd taking little balls of the milk rice and giving them to a dog that's sleeping under a low stool. Feeding the dog the good stuff, too.
Yeah. And Kochahalika looks at this dog, getting this nice food regularly, and he thinks, with envy, Punyavataya Sunaki, lucky dog. I wish I had it that good.
Envious of a dog's meal shows where his mind is at, and that envy feels like it might lead somewhere.
It leads somewhere immediately and tragically. Kochahalika dies that very night from indigestion. Apparently, died
from indigestion.
Seems so.
Yeah.
And get this, he is instantly reborn in the womb of the very dog he was just envying.
No way! Reborn as the puppy of the dog he envied. Talk about instant karma. His envious thought literally shaped his next life.
Exactly. Swift and ironic. Power of thought right there.
Unbelievable. Meanwhile, the woman, the former wife of the man who abandoned the child, she eventually becomes the wife of the kind cowherd.
Interesting turn for her.
Yeah. She settles into her duties, and she continues the practice of giving food to the Pachika Buddha. She'd cook rice, put it in his bowl, pachikabutasa, pati patipaka.
Okay.
And when she gave it, she would dedicate the merit to her former husband, who is now, unknowingly, the consciousness inside the puppy saying, Bante da sasafo papuchiti. Venerable sir, may this reach your servant.
Wow. Still showing compassion, dedicating merit to him, even though he's now a dog. She's seeking redemption, perhaps, trying to make amends through merit.
Seems like it. She decides to stay there, attending to the Pacheca Buddha regularly, hoping to gain good merit. Vatthu Pasavisami.
Finding a path through service and compassion.
So the dog, the mother dog, carrying Kocholika's consciousness, eventually gives birth. Just one puppy.
The puppy is born.
And the kind cowherd takes care of it, feeds it milk from one of his own cows. Gopalako tasa ikatenuya kiradapezi. The puppy grows quickly. So Sāmāvatī.
The cycle of kindness continues. The cowherd's generosity extends to the puppy, too.
And the Pacheca Buddha, when he eats his daily meal, he always gives a little bit to the puppy. Atasa Pacheca Buddha buyantonibada ekapata puchete deti.
Sharing his food.
Yeah. And because of this regular feeding, so bata piche disaya, the puppy develops a strong affection for the Pacheca Buddha. Pacheca Buddha zinamakasi. A bond forms.
That makes sense. Consistent kindness, especially around food for an animal. It builds trust, affection, a connection formed through simple giving.
Now, the cowherd himself visits the Pacheca Buddha twice a day to look after him. Gopalako nibada vivare Pacheca Buddhasa upatinayati.
Very devout.
And on the path, he has this habit of clearing away any wild animals, volabidiani, by hitting the bushes with a stick and making this susu sound 3 times to scare them off. Susutiti tekatu sadekatu balmisi balapizi.
Protecting the path.
And the mother dog always goes with him. Sunakopi tenisadigatati. It's their routine.
The picture of harmony, really. Humans, animals, the spiritual figure, all connected in this daily rhythm of care.
Then the cowherd tells the Pacheca Buddha, "Look, if I can't make it someday, I'll send the dog. If you see the dog, that's the signal to come for your meal. Bante yada mi okaso na bavisati, tada imasuna kiupesesami, imasa paitasanyana agacheyatati."
Using the dog as a messenger shows the trust there.
Yeah. And so on days he was busy on Okasa Davis, he'd just tell the dog, "Gachtata ayala neti, go child, bring the revered one." And the dog would go fetch him.
A reliable little messenger? That's quite a bond across species.
There's even this one incident where the dog is guiding the Pacheca Buddha, but maybe the Pacheca Buddha takes a wrong turn. The dog tries to correct him, barking, blocking the wrong way.
Trying to steer him right.
Yeah, but the Pacheca Buddha doesn't turn back. Maybe he doesn't realize, and even gently pushes the dog aside with his foot.
Oh, poor dog.
But the dog is persistent. It knows the right way. It actually gently bites the hem of the Pacheca Buddha's robe. Pulls him back onto the correct path.
It bit his robe to guide him. That's dedication.
Right. The text says it developed this really strong affection and sense of responsibility. This little dog was totally devoted.
Amazing loyalty, even gently correcting the enlightened one. Shows the depth of its affection, its understanding of their routine.
So time passes. The Pacheca Buddha's robe gets old and worn out. Taro aparabej Pacheca Buddhasa chivadazidi.
Needs new robe.
The kind cowherd offers him the cloth for new ones. Athasako palako kevara fatingi adasi. The Pacheca Buddha accepts, but says he needs to go somewhere else to get them made properly. It's hard work for one person alone. Avuso kevarama ekakena dukarau katu fasuke thanagantva karasamiti?
Needs help, or maybe a specific place. Shows that even solitary figures sometimes need community for practical things.
The cowherd begs him, "Make them here, venerable sir. Ithiva bante karothati." But the Pacheca Buddha says it's not possible.
So he has to leave.
Yeah. The cowherd then pleads, "Well, don't stay away too long then. And all the while, the little dog is right there, listening intently to their conversation.
It senses the departure, that bond again, the cowherd's plea, the dog's attention. They're going to miss him.
The Pacheca Buddha says his farewells, tells the cowherd to stay well. Turns him back. Then he just rises into the air.
Rises into the air. Miraculous departure.
Yeah. Flies off towards the legendary Ganamadana mountain, Gandamatana Bimuko Pakami. And the dog, its reaction is just devastating.
What does it do?
It barks, watching him go up, up. And as the Pacheca Buddha finally disappears from view, Tasmi Kokopatha Vijahante, the source says the dog's heart broke.
Its heart broke. Oh, that's incredibly sad. Such a powerful image of loss and grief, even for an animal. Shows how deep that connection went.
A truly poignant end to that relationship. And this sort of concludes by saying that this whole teaching, this Dāsana, it was beneficial, sathika, for many people, Mahajanasa.
Suggesting these stories, with all their twists and turns, carry real wisdom. Lessons about life, loss, karma, compassion, intended for a wide audience.
As we wrap up this deep dive, it's really striking how connected all these stories feel, isn't it? Even though they seem so different on the surface.
Absolutely. That thread of loss, manasabhyasane, runs through so much of it.
You see it in the kings giving up their thrones, the friends being separated by death and rebirth.
The queen's absolute terror and isolation, that awful abandonment by the starving couple.
And rebirth is everywhere, too. The king becoming a deva, Kochilika becoming that dog.
And then moments of just unexpected kindness. The ascetic helping the queen, initially anyway. The cowherd taking in the desperate couple.
Yeah. And these incredibly deep, sometimes surprising bonds formed between beings. King and king, mother and child, ascetic and queen.
Even Pachika Buddha and dog, those connections really drive the narrative.
What really hits home for me is how actions, sometimes small ones, sometimes big ones, driven by desperation or kindness, just ripple outwards.
Exactly. The consequences, intended or unintended, just spread. You see how the choices made in these crucial moments really shape the characters' fates, both in this life and, according to the stories, the next.
It definitely makes you pause and think about attachment and separation in your own life, you know, how even simple interactions can forge these deep connections. And inevitably, with connection comes the potential for pain when things change, when separation happens.
It's a reminder, isn't it, that life is maybe far more interwoven, more interconnected than we usually acknowledge day to day.
So the thought to leave you with is maybe this. What subtle actions, what small choices in your own life might be creating unseen connections or setting future consequences in motion? Certainly something worth considering. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your fascinating source materials, dig into them, and pull out the key insights for you.
Exactly. Shortcuts to being well-informed.
And today we're diving into a really rich collection of ancient stories. It's from the Sāmāvatī Vatthu 2MD.
That's right. And these aren't just old tales. Think of it as a deep dive into human nature itself.
Yeah.
Our mission here is to explore the big themes running through them. You know, things like duplicity versus straightforwardness, which pops up right away.
Okay.
And karma, obviously the consequences of actions. Plus societal stuff like family, class, and just those crazy twists of fate you see.
Absolutely. And it's quite a mix of stories we've got. There's this fascinating bit about animals versus humans. Then the incredible life of Gosaka, the sort of tragic story of the Padavati merchant family.
Right.
And then the really tangled lives of King Udena, Sāmāvatī, Valsaladatta, and Mangandia.
And don't forget the tree deity. Oh, yeah.
And how all these past lives seem to connect and explain what's happening now. Okay, let's get into it. That first point, the one about animals and humans.
Right. It's quite a statement the text makes. It basically says animals are straightforward. What you see is what you get. Thought and speech align.
Okay.
But humans, well, humans are often duplicitous. There's a gap between inner thoughts and outward communication. And that really sets the stage, doesn't it, for all the complexity and sometimes the outright deception we see in these human stories.
It really does. Makes you think. And it makes Gosaka's story, which comes next, even more striking. His birth, we're told, was because of his mother's devotion to a Pacceka Buddha.
Yes, a solitary enlightened one. And get this, he actually spent time in the Tavatissa heaven.
Wow. But that didn't last forever.
No. And there are specific reasons why beings leave these heavenly realms. It could be lifespan ending, merit running out, lack of sustenance because they get heedless, or even anger.
So which one was it for Gosaka?
For Gosaka, it was that third one, heedlessness. He got caught up enjoying the sensual pleasures, neglected his spiritual food, you could say, and down he came.
So even in heaven, you've got to stay mindful.
Pretty much. It's a celestial cautionary tale, like you said.
So from heaven, he lands in Kosambi, reborn as the son of a courtesan, who then tries to abandon him.
Yeah, which, given the times, you can sort of understand the pressure she might have felt. But this is where it gets really interesting.
The animals.
Exactly. Instead of being harmed when left exposed, animals actually protect him. Crows, dogs, none of them would go near him.
Why? What was protecting him?
It's directly linked back to that past devotion to the Pacceka. It's pure karma in action.
Right.
Good deeds creating the shield, you know? Even when things look dire, it shows the tenacity of karma.
Tenacity, that's a good word for it. So he gets found, adopted once, then adopted again by a wealthy merchant. Things seem okay
For a bit.
until the merchant has his own son. Suddenly, Gosaka's a problem.
A big problem, an heir problem.
Right.
And the merchant decides Gosaka has to go. Permanently.
And what follows is just attempt after attempt.
It's unbelievable. First, he tries to get him trampled by oxen.
Yeah.
The led ox literally stands over him, protects him, creates a safe space.
Okay.
Then he tries arranging an accident with cartwheels. Same thing happens. The lead cart somehow avoids him.
This is getting weird.
It gets weirder. He has him left in a charnel ground, exposed, dangerous. Animals, other beings, nothing harms him.
Wow.
Another time, he's supposed to be pushed off a cliff, basically, but lands safely in a bamboo thicket. It's like he's got this invisible shield.
Generated by that past good deed.
That's the implication. It's almost comical, the merchant's failures, if the intent wasn't so dark.
And somewhere along the way, he gets the name Gosaka. Does that mean anything?
It likely relates to sound, maybe a cry when he was found, or just the noise he made in the merchant's life by existing. He was a threat because, well, inheritance.
The merchant wanted it all for his biological son.
Exactly. Which leads him to this plot with a potter.
Ah, yes. This doesn't end well, does it?
It ends terribly, but not for Gosaka. The merchant arranges for Gosaka to be killed at the pottery, his body hidden in the kiln.
Yeah.
But the merchant's own son, apparently deep in gambling debt and looking for a way out, somehow ends up at the potter's instead.
Oh, no.
He becomes the victim of his own father's plot.
That's horrific. The irony. The grief for the merchant must have been immense.
Unimaginable. And the Buddha actually addresses him directly about this.
What does he say?
He teaches him about the heavy consequences of harming the innocent. There are verses quoted about all the kinds of suffering that come back to you: physical pain, losing wealth, mental anguish, bad rebirths.
A stark warning about negative karma.
Absolutely. Inescapable.
But even this doesn't stop the merchant. He tries again.
He does. He sends Gosaka off with a letter to his estate manager, far away.
And Gosaka has no idea what's in it.
None at all. It's basically a death warrant. Kill the bearer.
But fate, or karma, steps in again. This time with a female merchant.
Yes. A really fantastic twist. Gosaka stops in this village on the way, meets this woman who happens to know his adoptive father.
Okay.
Through a series of, let's say, fortunate events, she sees the letter, maybe recognizes the handwriting, gets suspicious, reads it.
And realizes it's a death sentence.
Right. And she feels this is wrong. The text hints at a past life connection. Maybe they'd done a good deed together. So she does something amazing.
What?
She swaps the letter, takes the death warrant, and replaces it with one saying, essentially, marry Gosaka to my daughter and make him my heir.
No way.
Yes way. Total switcheroo.
So Gosaka arrives, delivers the new letter.
And ends up married to the merchant's daughter and inheriting everything, completely unaware he just dodged death multiple times. He lives this prosperous life.
Incredible. Meanwhile, the merchant gets sick. He's dying. He wants to see Gosaka.
Right. But his daughter-in-law, Gosaka's wife, she keeps putting it off.
Why would she do that? She knows the truth.
She knows everything. She knows her father wanted Gosaka dead. She's protecting her husband, basically, preventing any last-minute attempts.
Smart woman.
Very. The merchant dies, Gosaka inherits it all, and then his wife tells him...
Tells him the whole story. About the letters.
Everything. By the way, dear, my father tried to kill you repeatedly, and I saved your life by switching that letter.
How does he react? He must have been stunned.
He doesn't believe her at first. It sounds too wild, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
So to get confirmation, he seeks out his birth mother, Kali, the courtesan.
And she confirms it.
She confirms the whole crazy story, the abandonment, the merchant's plots, the miraculous escapes. It all clicks into place for him.
Wow. That realization must have hit him hard.
Profoundly. He realizes how incredibly fortunate he's been, how protected, and this realization turns into immense gratitude, which then fuels great generosity.
What a journey.
Yeah.
It really hammers home that karma theme, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Good deeds paying off, bad deeds backfiring.
Absolutely. And the sheer tenacity of that protection from his past devotion. It wasn't just one lucky break. It was consistent intervention.
And that generosity you mentioned, that leads us nicely into the next story, right? Vatthu.
Exactly, Padavathya. He was another wealthy merchant from a different city, friends with Gosaka, interestingly, though they'd never actually met.
Friends by reputation.
Sort of, yeah.
Sure.
Exchanging gifts, goodwill, based on knowing of each other's standing and character.
Okay. But tragedy strikes Padavathio's city.
A devastating plague. wipes out the animals first, then hits the human population hard.
Oh, dear.
Padavatia, his wife, and their daughter manage to flee. They head towards Kosambi, hoping to find Gosaka.
So they're refugees, essentially.
Exactly. And it starkly contrasts with Gosaka's protected life, doesn't it? Shows how vulnerable life can be.
Their arrival in Kosambi. It doesn't go well, does it?
No, it's heartbreaking. They arrive completely broke, starving, exhausted. Padavatia sends his daughter out to beg for just a little food.
Just to survive until they can find Gosaka.
Right. But the effort, the relief of finally eating something after such hardship. It's too much for the parents. They both die shortly after eating the alms the daughter brings back.
Oh, that's awful. Just exhaustion and illness.
Yeah. A really stark picture of poverty and the toll of the plague.
So the daughter is left completely alone.
Utterly alone. But then someone notices her. A compassionate treasurer. He sees her distress, recognizes her noble bearing despite her state, and takes her in.
Adopts her
As his own daughter. And he renames her Sāmāvatī.
Sāmāvatī. And she then crosses paths with Gosaka.
In a really interesting way, even though she's young and just went through this trauma, she shows incredible wisdom.
Thanks so.
She notices that Gosaka's way of giving alms is, well, kind of noisy and chaotic.
Right.
And she quietly suggests a more organized, silent approach. Gosaka's used to the noise, so when it suddenly goes quiet, he's like, what's going on?
And he finds out it was her idea.
Finds out it was her, learns who she is, the daughter of his respected friend Padavatia, and is just amazed by her insight.
So he takes her in too.
He adopts her as his eldest daughter, gives her honor, security, a place in his home.
From orphan to eldest daughter.
Yeah.
Quite a shift. Now, Sāmāvati's story gets tangled up with royalty, doesn't it? King Udana.
Yes, King Udana. During a festival, Sāmāvatī goes down to the river with her attendants, all 500 of them.
500 attendants. Gosaka adopted them too.
Well, they came with her when Gosaka adopted her. It signifies her status. Anyway, the king sees her. He's instantly smitten, demands Gosaka send her to the palace.
Does Gosaka refuse?
He hesitates, might have refused initially, but the king is forceful. Eventually, Gosaka suggests the king take her and all her attendants.
So she becomes queen. Just like that.
Chief queen, actually.
Yeah.
Another massive shift in her fortunes.
But Udana already has a queen, right? Vassiladatta.
Yes, Vassiladatta. Her backstory is pretty dramatic, too. She's the daughter of King Kanchapajata.
And there's a story about Udana being captured.
Right. Kantapajota captured Udana, who was famous for his skill with elephants, especially this secret elephant charming mantra.
Ah, a bargaining chip.
Exactly. Kantapajota says, teach me the mantra and I'll free you and give you my daughter Vassiladatta in marriage.
Quite the deal. How did the teaching go? I heard there was something funny about it.
Well, they didn't trust each other. So, Udana taught the mantra to Vassiladatta, but she was hidden behind a screen, pretending to be a hunchbacked serving woman. At one point, Udana corrects her pronunciation and makes a comment about the hunchback speech, not knowing it's the princess. Bit awkward.
Huh. A strange start to a marriage.
Yeah, but apparently despite that, they developed a strong friendship.
Okay, so we have Sāmāvatī and Vassiladatta. Then Magandia enters the picture. How does she arrive?
Magandia is another famously beautiful woman. Initially, she'd been sort of rejected as a match for someone else by the Buddha, actually, very politely.
The Buddha rejected her.
Not quite like that. Her parents offered her to him. He explained she wasn't suitable for his path. Her parents actually understood and became enlightened followers.
But Magandia didn't take it well.
No, she held a grudge against the Buddha because of it. Later, her uncle presents her to King Udana.
And Udana?
He's captivated by her beauty, makes her another chief queen. So now you have these 3 powerful women in the court.
Things are getting complicated. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The story of the tree deity. How does that fit in?
It's a beautiful little story about karma again. Starts with a poor laborer working for Anathapindika, the famous benefactor of the Buddha.
Right.
This laborer sort of accidentally ends up observing the Upasatha day, a day of practice. He didn't plan to, and he gets really hungry.
Wants to break the observance.
He's tempted, but Anathapindika is kind to him, encourages him, and out of gratitude, the laborer resolves to finish the day properly.
And then?
He actually dies that night. But because of the merit from that partial but sincere observance,
He gets a good rebirth.
a very good one. He's reborn as a powerful tree deity. a diva living in a tree.
Wow. From poor laborer to deity, and he uses his power.
Yes, benevolently. He provides food for some wandering ascetics.
Okay.
Then these ascetics hear someone mention the name Buddha. Just hearing the name inspires them.
They convert.
They seek out the Buddha, listen to his teachings, and become enlightened themselves. Shows the ripple effect of good deeds, the laborers, Anathapika's kindness, the deity's help.
And the power of the Buddha's name and teaching. It also loops back to the generosity of people like Anathapita supporting the whole system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their support created the conditions for merit-making like the laborers.
Okay, another key figure, Kujatara.
Yeah.
She was Sāmāvātī's servant, right? The one with the hunchback.
That's her. Her job was fetching flowers for the queen every day.
And she encounters the Buddha.
Yes. One day, while out getting flowers, she hears the Buddha teach, and it hits her profoundly. She attains Sotapadhi stream entry, first stage of enlightenment.
That must have changed her.
Completely. Sāmāvatī notices she's suddenly much more diligent, focused, maybe serene when she comes back with the flowers.
And she asks her about it.
Yes, and Hojatara explains what happened, shares the Dhamma she heard from the Buddha.
And Sāmāvatī and her attendants listen.
They listen intently as Kujatara recounts the teachings. And just from hearing it from Kujatara, they also attain stream entry. All 500 attendants plus Sāmāvatī.
Just from listening to her servant.
Well, their enlightened servant and now teacher, they develop huge respect for her. She becomes their guide.
And the Buddha recognized her ability.
He declared her the foremost female lay disciple when it came to explaining the Dhamma. Pretty amazing.
So now the queens are stream enterers. They must want to see the Buddha themselves.
Desperately. But royal women couldn't just wander out of the palace.
Right. Restrictions. So how did Kujatara help?
She was clever. She figured out the route the Buddha took when going for alms at the houses of Anathapika and others. So she arranged for small holes, like peepholes, to be made in the palace walls overlooking that path.
So they could see him pass by.
Exactly. They could see him pay respects from afar, even toss offerings down without breaking protocol. Ingenious.
Very resourceful.
Yeah.
It sounds like a time of real spiritual growth there.
It does, but then Magandia's jealousy boils over.
Yes, the third queen. What does she do?
She's consumed by bitterness, especially towards Sāmāvatī and her huge following. She starts spreading lies,
What kind of lies?
accusing Sāmāvatī and her attendants of disloyalty to the king, maybe plotting against him.
Does the king believe her?
Not at first. He loves Sāmāvatī. But Magandia is relentless, insidious. She keeps whispering doubts, sowing suspicion. Eventually, he starts to wonder.
And Magandia keeps plotting.
Oh, yes. She tries framing the queens with poisoned chickens, but Sāmāvatī and her attendants refuse to harm them because of their practice.
That backfires on Magandia then.
It does, but she doesn't stop. Then she hides a snake in the king's loot, trying to make it seem like Sāmāvatī did it.
This is getting really nasty.
It culminates in something truly horrific. While the king is away,
What'd she do?
she sets fire to the building where Sāmāvatī and her 500 attendants live.
Oh my God.
They're trapped. But even as the fire rages, Sāmāvatī leads them in practicing loving kindness, even towards Magandia.
While they're dying.
While they're dying, they all perish in the fire.
That's just devastating. How does the king react when he finds out?
He returns, sees the destruction, learns what happened. He's utterly grief-stricken.
And Magandia, does she get away with it?
No. Her crime comes to light, she confesses. The king's justice is brutal. She and her relatives suffer a terrible, gruesome death. Retribution.
It seems incredibly harsh, but the Buddha explains this, doesn't he? Again, karma.
Yes. He reveals the karmic root. In a past life, Magandia and her group had burned a Pacceka Buddha to death in a grass hut.
So death by fire in this life.
Was the direct result of causing death by fire in a past life. A chilling example of karmic consequence.
And even things like Kujatara's hunchback are explained by karma.
Exactly. Apparently, in a past life, she playfully mimicked a Paccekabuddha's slightly stooped walk.
And her wisdom.
Came from offering blankets to Paccekabuddhas in the cold. Her stream entry from supporting them. Her teaching ability from giving alms to a bhikkhuni, a nun, way back.
It's such an intricate web of cause and effect across lifetimes.
It really is. Everything connects.
And the Buddha wraps all this up with a teaching about heedfulness.
Heedfulness, appamada, versus heedlessness, pamada. It's a crucial distinction.
What's the core message?
He basically says that those who are heedful, mindful, diligent, cultivating good qualities are truly alive spiritually. They're progressing.
And the heedless?
Those who neglect practice, indulge, remain unaware, they're like the living dead, spiritually speaking, even if they live a long time physically. The heedful don't really die because their progress continues. The heedless are just stuck.
So even though Sāmāvatī and her attendants died tragically,
Because they lived virtuously, practiced loving kindness even at the end, they made huge spiritual progress. Some even reached higher stages of enlightenment right at that moment. None died without advancement.
that puts a different perspective on their end. So reflecting on all these stories, what are the big takeaways?
Well, obviously, the massive theme is karma, how actions and intentions echo through time, often lifetimes.
Right, good and bad.
Definitely. And then just the complexity of human nature, deep compassion side by side with terrible jealousy and deceit.
Loyalty and betrayal.
Exactly. And through it all, this potential for both incredible suffering and real spiritual growth.
The twists and turns are something else, but like you said at the start, they feel relevant, don't they? These insights into how people operate.
They really do.
Yeah.
Timeless in a way. It makes you think about, the unseen forces shaping our own lives. Maybe the thought to leave everyone with is this. How do these stories make you reflect on your own intentions, your own actions, right now in this present moment?
Because that's where karma is made.
That's where it's made. So maybe ask yourself, which story, which theme really struck a chord with you? And what might that tell you about how you see the world and your own journey within it?